If you've got a Bible, go ahead and open it up to John chapter 4. We're going to be in a couple of places in the Bible tonight because I've asked for some help with this sermon. So we're going to be in John chapter 4 and also in Romans chapter 12. But we're going to start and finish in John chapter 4. Most of you are very familiar with this story, so some of what I'm going to say is just going to be old news for you. But let's set the stage a little bit for where the story picks up in John chapter 4 in verse 19. Let me kind of set the stage. There is a racism problem in the New Testament. It's quite obvious. Nobody's hiding it in the New Testament. The Jews hate the Samaritans, and the Samaritans hate the Jews just because of their family origin. And Jesus, for whatever reason, makes this intentional, deliberate bypass and says to his disciples, I am going into Samaria. I've got something important that I need to do there. Well, there is also this gender issue that's often in the New Testament. It's very subtle, but if you pay attention, it's there. Men typically don't associate with women. Women have almost no place in society. They're not wearing a burqa like you'd see in the Muslim culture today. But back in Jesus' day, women often were to be seen and not to be heard. And a rabbi, no respecting rabbi, would be caught with a woman having a conversation with her, definitely not with a Samaritan woman. And then you have this woman that we read about in John chapter 4, who is clearly the town outcast because of her morality. Now picture this, wrong race, wrong gender, this woman was immoral. Every strike that she could have against her, she's got against her, and Jesus makes a deliberate attempt to go engage this woman in a conversation. That's what we're going to read about starting in John chapter 4, verse 19. And the first thing that I want you to hear about worship tonight, we're talking about music, so we're just going to talk about the elephant that's been in the room at Calvary Baptist Church for the last several months around here. First thing I want you to hear is we need to rediscover the proper place of worship. Jesus gets real specific about the place that God expects us to worship from. Sir, the woman said, you must be a prophet. Now, by the way, the word prophet is loaded in Jesus' day. It's not just the guy who can tell what the future holds, but a prophet was often considered a man of great respect. A prophet was somebody who was a spiritual man. And the woman says, sir, you must be a prophet because you're immediately turning this conversation in a spiritual direction. And by the way, she didn't want to have a spiritual conversation because it's the middle of the day and everybody knows this woman's reputation. So she tries to change the subject on Jesus. And she tries to deflect the attention away from her by talking about the conundrum in Jesus' day. Verse 20. So tell me, prophet, why is it that you Jews insist that we Samaritans claim it is here, or why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place to worship while we Samaritans claim that it's here at Mount Gerizim? In other words, which one of these two, Jesus, is the right place to worship? Where our ancestors worshiped or where you're currently worshiping is kind of the question that she's asking. I'm going to pick up in verse 21 in just a second. But let me tell you a little bit about Mount Gerizim, what she's referring to. This is the site where when the 10 northern tribes of Israel split off from the 2 southern tribes, they needed a place to worship and they didn't want to go all the way to Jerusalem. So they set up a little temple in a place called Mount Gerizim. Now, they chose this mountain on purpose because this is the place where Jacob and the ancestors of Israel worshiped. And this woman says, it was good enough for my forefathers and your forefathers, Jesus. Why isn't it good enough today? Listen to verse 21. Jesus replied, believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain in Samaria or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one that you worship, while we Jews know all about him, for salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed. It's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father, listen to this phrase, The Father is looking, he's longing, he's actively seeking those who worship him that way. For God is spirit, so those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. It's interesting to me that this woman is going to use worship as the way of deflecting attention away from what's really the issue that Jesus is trying to get at. It's actually her heart and her actions that proceed out of her heart that Jesus is starting to drill in on. And she doesn't like it because it starts to feel uncomfortable, so she starts to talk about the issue that's been a conundrum in Jesus' day for a long time. Why do you folks that are Jews in the South say we've got to go to Jerusalem when my ancestors said it was perfectly all fine? And by the way, your ancestors, Jesus said it was perfectly fine to worship on this mountain. She talks, it's no longer now a conversation about the space where we're worshiping. Now it's a conversation about race. She's asking the question, Jesus, am I still part of the family of God because I'm a Samaritan? Or is it only the Jews? And Jesus deals with this woman very patiently, very graciously. He says, it's not Jerusalem anymore. It's not Samaria. It's a whole nother location. And obviously, from this point, John chapter 4 on, worship is not an issue about the place. It's not about the building. It's about the heart. Because the Father is looking for people who will worship him in the heart, in spirit, and in truth. So where does Jesus want us to worship him? He wants us to worship him right here at the heart level. When Jesus says salvation comes from the Jews, it's passed on from generation to generation. The Jews, their hearts are in the right place. And now Jesus is intentionally, deliberately taking this message to a different race of people. He's taking it to the Samaritans. He's taking it to a woman. He's taking it to an adulterer. And he says, the gospel is for you too. It's not just for the promised sons of Abraham. And by the way, Jesus is saying we live in a new era where it's no longer about going to the temple and sacrificing an animal. Now it's about a heart issue with your Father. So essentially what Jesus is saying to this lady is don't settle for just a style of worship. Because if you're settling for just a certain style of worship, you're setting the bar way too low. He's saying what's really important is the heart of worship, not the style of the music, but the heart of worship. And God, by the way, is longing. He's looking continuously for people to worship him like that, worship him in spirit and in truth. One of our forefathers in the Southern Baptist Convention, a brilliant theologian, his name was James Pettigrew Boyce. He helped define the doctrine of the priesthood of the believer, which said you don't have to go to a temple anymore to worship. You don't have to go through a priest anymore. As a believer in Jesus Christ, you now have direct access to God the Father in an intimate relationship with him. No longer need to go to a specific place, no longer need to go through a person. The believer is a priest in their own right. And as he was fleshing out this doctrine, I'll never forget what he said next. Be careful with this. He said the priesthood of the believer, and not just our denomination, but among all Christians, if we're not careful, will cause every man to become a church under his own hat. What James Pettigrew Boyce would say if he was here today is he would say there is about 750 people a week that come to this church. All of them have access to God. All of them have desires. All of them have specific styles. All of them have wants. All of them have preferences. And unfortunately, there's no way to get 750 people in total agreement on anything, especially among Southern Baptists. But if we're not careful, every man and woman and child in this room will become a priest under our own hat and will care only about us and this little church under our own hat, and not only about me and the little church under my own hat instead of about us, or more importantly, instead of about him. Worship is about a lot more than just a style of music. In fact, church music was instituted for the purpose of helping us put our heart where it's supposed to be. It was never designed to be an end in of itself. was designed to help us put our heart where it's supposed to be. So the music that we sing around here is much less important than what's happening inside of here. The music is important, but it's a lot less important than what's happening inside of here. And no one can speak to this better than Pastor Otto Price. So the next thing that I want you to hear, not from me, but from him, is worship is more than just music. Otto, you want to grab one of those microphones and come on up here for me?
In that, we were talking and praying really through this the last couple of days. As I said last night, I'm the worship and arts pastor, and so music is kind of my area of expertise, but I view music as Pastor Jeff said, as a tool, really. It's not an end in of itself. Worship is more than music, but rather it's a lifestyle that a believer practices in the secret place, the gathering place, and the marketplace. Romans 12:1 says that like this, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." So what is our worship motive? We talked about worship before. Webster's Dictionary describes worship as honor, is to give honor and extravagant love and extreme submission. And we know that's God, our Savior. Amen? And in that, God has given us the great tool of music. And like I said last night, I wasn't hired as a lifestyle coach. I was hired as the music guy. But because music is what I've done for years and what I'm doing now, music is an opportunity for us to get to express our worship to God. God is looking for worshipers that are convinced and that worshiped him. John 4:23 and 24. In knowing that worship is not a style but a lifestyle, our lives should be completely submitted to God's will. And like I said, there's 3 areas. If you want to write this down, it's probably not in here, but the 3 areas I see it are, first of all, the secret place or the individual place. And I describe it, I see it like this. It's a personal and a regular devotion, prayer time, and journal to God. I find that sometimes, especially just being honest with you, I was in a group called Sonic Flood, and it did well, but the group, we would travel around the world, and we did what they call modern worship around the world. People knew the band, and it did well, but there was a season when some of the guys didn't even open their Bible. And sometimes you can get in the habit of thinking, well, just because I'm singing Christian songs and singing about Jesus, I don't need to have a personal relationship with Jesus. And that's a mistake. And you can get off guard and and nothing ever bad happened, but you slowly see yourself walking away. So the challenge is that we can't just come and sing songs about Jesus. We have to actually have a personal relationship with him. And since most of us work outside of the church, having these personal times, it really helps us, and it's critical in the life of a believer to keep our focus on the North Star, and that North Star is Jesus. It helps also give framework for moms. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, has a degree from UGA, go Dogs. She has a degree, and she had a sociology degree, was going to maybe do pre-med, but she set all that aside to focus on raising 6 kids, or 7 if you include me, raise 6 kids at home, and her focus wasn't on any of that, but because of her time with the Lord, that gave her perspective on what she was doing. So moms who are staying at home, it's having that private time is important to get perspective on what you do. Traveling businessmen, coaches, whatever we do in the marketplace, having that private time is critical. The second area is the marketplace or work. There shouldn't be, in my opinion, a game face. There shouldn't be a sacred, secular divide in our work. We should have the same way we are at church. We should treat people the same way with the same ethics as we do at work. Even if no one sees it, we will see it, and it speaks to the lordship of Christ in our lives. If no one else sees it, then we at least are seeing it. Colossians 3:22 says it this way: "Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men." knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. Psalms 34:1-2 says, I will praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak of his praises. I will boast only in him. Let all the helpless take heart. And the last of those three, we said, secret place, the workplace, the gathering, the marketplace, and the last is the gathering place. That's where we are today. There's something powerful I've seen and when we gather together in unity. Psalm 133, 1-3 says it, and I have 5 boys. I've seen this very powerful. It says, how beautiful and sweet when brethren dwell together in unity. Amen, brothers. You know, because when my sons fight, there's not unity. But when they're in unity, nothing gets broken in the house. There's no reason to go to Lowe's or repair a wall or anything like that. So when brothers dwell together in unity, there's power in that. Singing in worship of God existed in eternity past before the world was created. God created music, in fact, and singing was created before the world was created. This is how important music is to God. Job 38:4 says it this way. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. Who determined its dimensions and stretched out the surveying line? What supports its foundations, and who laid its cornerstone? As the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. God really, I think, and if you know in the science of music, there's music is in everything. There's a science to it, but if you listen to classical music, it helps kids with their math. So music is a very important pneumatic to convey a message. So it is also interesting that the Bible emphasizes on the music that is sung together. It's not listening. Worship music should be something that we cooperate in together. We should not just simply be listening to it. We should be participating in it. Psalm 96 says it this way. Sing a new song to the Lord. Let the whole earth sing to the Lord. Sing to the Lord, praise his name. Each day proclaim the good news that he saves. A New Testament example talks about it like this in Ephesians 5:19-20. Singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs among yourselves and making music to the Lord in your hearts. And he gives thanks for everything to God the Father in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So the last thing I'll say as we continue on this of redefining worship, music is vastly important. And we really want to honor all the different styles and all the different ways. But to me, worship should be a lifestyle. It should be the residue. When we come into this place, it should be the residue of what we've been doing throughout the week. If we truly are submitted to him, to Jesus, in his will and in him and his ways, then everything we do should be an act of worship. Our jobs, cleaning our homes, caring for our children, coaching Little League, etc. I long to see our corporate worship be the cumulative effect of committed lives that have sought to honor Jesus throughout our days, weeks, and years. Since worship is not a spectator sport, it is important and powerful when we collectively lift every voice.
Hey, thanks, Otto. You've just heard him say that worship is about more than just music. And so please do us a favor. Let's don't use this word as a synonym just for the music that we sing in church. Worship is what we sing, but it's much more than that. You just heard it's a sacred place. It's a marketplace. It's a gathered place. And if you go back with me to John chapter 4, we're going to wrap up with this. And I think if this is really the crux of the issue that we're reading about in John chapter 4. It's not about race. It's not about space. It comes down to a person. And I think Jesus' challenge to us every time we walk in the doors of this building is to return to the person of worship. So listen to how he answers this question when he tells the lady, it's not about Gerizim, it's not about Jerusalem, it's not about what the style of songs that you sing. Listen to what he says in 25 and 26. And the woman said to him, she figures out where this conversation is going, and the woman says to him, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us Samaritans, just like he will to the Jews. He'll explain everything to us. And Jesus makes this crystal clear. In fact, besides his statement of who he is immediately before going to the cross in the four Gospels. This is the clearest declaration that Jesus makes in all of Scripture about himself. He says to the woman, I am the Messiah. You see those two words, I am there? Do you see the capitalization of the word am? He uses the proper name of God, and he says to her, God, I'm him. I'm not just the Son of God, I'm God the Son. You're looking at him, the one that you've been waiting for. And it's pretty obvious if you read on through the rest of John chapter 4, why Jesus went to Jerusalem, or why Jesus went to Samaria, and why he went to the well, and why he met this woman. Because when his disciples show up, they are shocked. They're aghast at what the master's doing. Why is he talking to a woman? Why is he talking to this woman? Why is he even having a conversation with a Samaritan? This woman leaves. She goes back to her hometown. And everybody knows that she's an adulterer. And she says the same message to them. I found the one that we've been longing for. He's waiting for you at the well. Come and see the one that we've been waiting for. And John chapter 4 tells us the whole town turned out. The whole town was confronted by Jesus. And the entire city, best that we can tell, come to faith in Jesus Christ because of this woman. Jesus went to the well to reclaim a race of people to himself. A race who felt like they were outcasts, like nobody wanted them, like nothing, they were unimportant. And he meets with this woman, the least likely of all people, and she radically turns her town upside down because she returned to the person of worship. You've been hearing us toss around the same phrase for almost an entire year around here. Since the first Sunday in January, we've been saying we want to be a church that passionately worships Jesus. But it occurred to me this week, I've never really defined what does that phrase mean, Jeff, passionately worship Jesus. Let me tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't simply mean just clapping your hands. Doesn't mean raising your hands, doesn't mean singing loud, doesn't mean sitting down or standing up. That's not passionate worship. You can passionately worship Jesus by doing some or all of those things, but you can passionately worship Jesus by doing none of those things. Passionate worship is in here. And you can manufacture emotion just by clapping on Sunday morning, but that doesn't equal passion. Jesus and you alone. Every time you walk in these doors, Jesus and you alone know whether or not it's passionate. Know whether or not your passion is in the right place, whether your passion is being directed to him, or whether your passion is about you. And the heart of what we're trying to accomplish in worship is to give our total, undivided attention to King Jesus. We're striving to develop a service that honors the past, that recognizes the people that are here in the present, but also prepares us for what Jesus will do for us in the future. And it happens in here. Not the songs that we sing, not the style of worship. It happens in here. When Jesus has fully captured the heart of his people, when he's placed his heart in their hearts, we'll care less about a style of music, and we'll care a whole lot more about the results of our corporate worship. And so I want you to see this video, that when I saw it for the first time, it stopped me dead in my tracks. What would happen to this church if we sang no music at all for about 6 weeks? What would that do to us? Listen to Matt Redman, the guy who wrote the song, The Heart of Worship, and listen to where this song came from. Watch this video. I want you to think for just a second about this. What if you weren't able to sing? What if you're part of the persecuted church that couldn't sing your worship to Jesus? When you first had the opportunity to sing again, would it feel a lot different to you? Hey, in just a second, I'm going to pray for us. I'm going to bring the band back up on stage, and we're going to practice worship like we're talking about tonight. But if I could narrow this entire sermon down into one thing, it's what you just heard from Matt Redman. It's not about you. It's not about me. Passionate worship is about King Jesus, and you alone know whether you're passionately worshiping King Jesus when you come in this room. If you're fighting for a specific style of worship, I can assure you it's not about Jesus when you come in here. But if your focus is on him, the style will become much less important. And the person you're worshiping will become supremely important. So bow your heads, let me pray, and then we're going to sing. And I hope you will passionately worship Jesus tonight. God, would you forgive all of us, myself and all of us in this room, when we've been selfish about our worship? Would you forgive us when we've been focused on ourselves or the people around us instead of focusing on your Son, Jesus? And because you've called us from death to life, because you have claimed us as your own, you determine how your people are supposed to worship. You tell us in your word it's in spirit and it's in truth, and you ask us to passionately worship you. In fact, you tell us anything else is not worthy of you. So my one prayer tonight, Jesus, is that your people, not just tonight, but every week around here, when they walk in the doors of this building, return to the heart of worship and they make it all about you. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.